Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Additionally, from December 12, 2019 through January 27, 2020, if you use this promo code, you will automatically be entered into a drawing to win a Theros Beyond Death Draft Booster Box. Also, there is another way to enter where no purchase is necessary. See the link in the description below for full details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and it's another big day of Theros Beyond Death previews. We have a lot of cards to look at, so I want to get into it pretty quickly. Couple things, though, before we do move into the cards. First, if you're curious as to where these cards came from, which content creators previewed which card, just check out the description below. That information is down there. And also, if you go over to FlipsideGaming.com, you can use the Heroes promo code, save 10% on any order over $10. And for right now, if you use that code, you will be entered into a drawing to possibly win a draft booster box of Theros Beyond Death. See the description below for those details as well. And when you use that code, it does support the channel, so thank you. And without any further ado, let's get into it. As always, we're going to start off by looking at some variations of cards we've already seen previously, but we just didn't see this exact version of the card. Moving from left to right, you have Caliphate, Beloved of the Sea. That's the regular variation of the card. The next three are going to be the variations you would find in collector boosters: Erebos' Intervention, Phoenix of Ash, and Haktos the Unscarred. If you want to hear my thoughts on these cards, we did discuss them previously, so just check out the playlist to catch up. But now let's get into the new stuff. Archon of Sun's Grace. Okay, this one's a rare. Let's talk limited first, though. You're not going to see it all the time, obviously, but if you do get a chance to play with it, you're going to be very happy. Let's say, for example, you never get a chance to make a token with this. You still get a 3/4 flying lifelink creature for 2 white and 2 on the battlefield? That's already awesome. The economy there is great. It also has 2 white mana in the cost for white devotion. And this is Theros, so you are going to play enchantment creatures and enchantments, and when that happens, you're going to get a 2/2 flying Pegasus token, which will have lifelink as long as this is in play. The card is going to be incredible there. This might see some standard play, perhaps as a 4-drop in a Flyers deck. Again, even if you never use the ability, like, it could just be good enough. And in standard, you might not use that ability. A lot of times you might not be playing with any enchantments in a deck like that. Commander players who like to play enchantment heavy decks, this will be good for you too. This one's a Portuguese language preview, Dryad of Life's Gift. Okay, this is a really sweet card. I'm sure it's going to see standard play. It just costs 1. It's a 1/1 with lifelink. But check out the ability. Pay 1, sacrifice a creature or enchantment you control, gains protection from a color of your choice until end of turn. So in standard, I could see this in a life gain deck. I think that type of deck is going to get a shot in the arm because of cards like this and Heliod, of course, which we saw last week. Early in the game, it could protect Ajani's Pridemate, it could protect Heliod himself, because even if Heliod's not a creature, this also protects enchantments. And it has lifelink, so every once in a while it will actually trigger those cards too, which is nice. Later in the game, you can turn this into an offensive threat by giving one of those big creatures protection from the color that you need to hopefully be able to push the damage across. Outside of that particular deck, I'm sure it's going to see play in a lot of different decks during its time in standard, I have no doubt. Limited, great card there too. Fantastic uncommon for all the same reasons I just mentioned. Additionally, the fact that this is an enchantment creature won't hurt either. Ichthyomorphosis. This card was previously leaked, so you might have seen it before. It's a fine limited common in blue. I mean, blue's always looking for creative ways to deal with creatures on the battlefield. They don't get to outright destroy stuff, so they either have to tap it down or turn it into something like a 0/1 fish in this case. What's kind of nice about this card in this particular limited environment, though, is it is an enchantment, and there are other cards that care about that. Also, it deals with a creature, but sticks around for blue devotion. So you do get a little extra value here. If your opponent happens to pull a god, granted you can't use this on the god until it's a creature, but this is one way of stabilizing for just 3 mana in that example. These type of cards too can sometimes be useful in Brawl or even Commander. Kiora, Best the Sea God. This is a big flashy mythic saga. Check this out. 2 blue and 5. 1, create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token with hexproof. 2, tap all non-land permanents target opponent controls. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. And 3, gain control of target permanent and opponent controls. Untap it. Let's talk limited first. It's a mythic. You won't see it all the time, but if you get a chance to play with this, you want to do so, and here's why. It adds 2 to your blue devotion, and it's also an enchantment, which could definitely matter. No, I'm kidding. That's not why you want to play it. You want to play this because this gives you an 8/8 hexproof Kraken, and does all these other crazy things later too. So yeah, sure, the other things might come into play, I suppose, but probably if your opponent doesn't have an answer to this, they might just be scooping when they see this. So this could just simply end a game for you. What about Commander? This seems like the type of thing you'd want to play in Commander, right? A little bit expensive, but does a lot of stuff. The answer is, yeah, kind of, sort of. Like, it's a good finisher. So when it comes down to me and one other opponent, maybe I can pull ahead with a card like this. However, this is not great in a multiplayer environment generally. So I could understand if there's decks that don't really bother running something like this. But if you're looking for a knockout blow, this might be able to help you at the end of a game. In Standard, most of the time you don't want to play a 7 casting cost spell, but I do think this one has a chance maybe in a control deck. They kind of want to play for a long game anyway. And we're going to look at a card in a moment that would make this one cheaper, and also when you play it, it would not be able to be countered. Those two cards together could see some play in the format. I would not be shocked at all. Okay, this is the card I was alluding to a few moments ago, Thrix the Sudden Storm. This is a 2 blue and 3 legendary creature, elemental giant, rare 4/5, flash flying, and here's the clause I was talking about. Spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. Okay, so let's go back to Standard now. Yeah, you could play this in the control deck with the Saga, but even if you didn't get that Saga, you know what? This could just be a finisher potentially for you. Wait until it's the end of the opponent's turn. If you don't have to use a counterspell, you put this down, and there you go. Hopefully you can ride this home while you control the board state. And it has the other ability there too, if you need it. Outside of control, though, there's other things you might do with this. Maybe Mono Blue Devotion in Standard, maybe a giant ramp build of some kind. We are getting some really good giants in this set, and Realm Cloak Giant is a thing. Consider this, you could use that card's adventure. If this is on the battlefield, then it can't be countered, and of course this would survive. That seems pretty good. Also, there's an existing Standard deck that could be interested, and that's of course the Simic Flash deck. Commander players, after all the tools we're getting, you might be interested in building around giants as well. Limited, I don't have to tell you this is a bomb. You want to play with this rare if you get the opportunity. Again, even if the ability never comes into play, 4/5 in the air for 5, that alone is going to be good for you in Draft or Sealed. I like this one, Whirlwind Denial. Check this out, blue and 2 instant. For each spell and ability your opponents control, counter it unless its controller pays 4. Okay, so first off, let me get this out of the way. When it comes to the older formats, yeah, you could play this against Storm. This is good against many of the Eldrazi that have abilities that trigger when you cast them. So I do think there's a chance this could see play in multiple formats. Now, let's talk Standard. There's a lot of very relevant cards that this can hose. Hydroid Krasis, Lucky Clover, Edgewall Innkeeper. I'm sure you can think of a lot more too. This is definitely going to see Standard play in control builds. Commander players, do you want to just throw this down and wipe out a big stack? That could be kind of fun. For each spell and ability your opponents control, so not just one opponent. In Limited, even if you don't do anything over the top and only play this to counter one spell or ability, even though you may have to pick your spot since an opponent can pay 4 to stop this, it will still be solid for the cost of 3. This one is a French language preview, Discordant Piper. Nothing crazy about this card, Zombie Satyr, so those are pretty relevant creature types perhaps. And this is just a fine limited curve filler that also gives you a little bit of a bonus when it dies. Now, Rakdos colors in Limited, from what we've seen so far, aren't doing the traditional aristocrat sacrifice for benefit thing. What we are seeing is a light sacrifice theme. But then from there, they're trying to take advantage of cards in the graveyard. So that could be through Escape, or it could be through some of the other cards that we've seen this week, where you can exile something from the graveyard to get a benefit, things along those lines. So an expendable creature like this that does give you a token could fit into that plan in Draft or Sealed. Eat to Extinction. This one's reminiscent of Vraska's Contempt, and much like that card, I think this is going to see a lot of Standard play. 4 casting cost, instant speed. It's going to exile target creature or planeswalker. So it can deal with gods, it can deal with planeswalkers, which of course can be very problematic, especially with all those War of the Spark planeswalkers out there. The extra words on the card are pretty good too, because they could enable escape, or at least just let you see more cards. You're going to see a lot of this in Standard next season, I have no doubt. Limited, fantastic rare removal for all the reasons I just mentioned. This one's a French language preview, Gravebreaker Lamia. Let's talk Limited first. This thing is going to be a rare bomb. 5 casting costs, 4/4 with lifelink. You got me right there. But do you want to play some escape? Because this is going to help you do that. When it enters the battlefield, you get to go through your library and take any card out and put it into your graveyard. So if you have that good escape card, you can go tutor for it, goes to the graveyard, and then hopefully you can play it at some point. Or if you already got the great escape card in your graveyard, you can go ahead and maybe grab a land or something, and that might get you closer to playing the card. Beyond that, spells from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast. So this is perfect if you're on the escape plan, because not only does it enable the escape mechanic like we mentioned, but also that could be a grindier, maybe slower game of Drafter Sealed. So this is going to help you through that by giving you the lifelinker as well. Maybe you can draw the game out a little bit by gaining some life. I should note too, this is an enchantment and that could matter. So what about standard? Could it see play there? Maybe. I think there's a slight chance. I mean, 5 is a little expensive for something like this, but if there is an all-in escape or reanimation deck that comes about, maybe this sees a little bit of play. Commander players, you're going to love this thing though. Just throw this in your Muldrotha build. This is going to be fantastic there. Annex Hardened in the Forge. Very good limited uncommon here. I love these demigods. They are fantastic for Drafter Sealed. In this case, even if this was the only thing on the battlefield for you, you got a 2/3 for 3. It's also an enchantment, which could matter, and it does contribute 2 to Red Devotion. That's very good. And you get more. Whenever this or another non-token creature you control dies, you get to create a 1/1 Red Satyr creature token with this creature can't block. But if the creature had power 4 when it died, you get to create 2 of these tokens instead. So yes, those tokens are rather aggressive. They can't block, but at least you're getting something when you lose your creature. This concept could play into a Rakdos strategy, at least to some degree, in Drafter Sealed. Or Gruul might appreciate this because you have larger creatures in that color combination, so if one of those larger creatures dies, you'll be getting 2 tokens instead of 1. And if you're real lucky and you happen to get the rare Gallia of the Endless Dance, which we saw a few days ago, yeah, your satyrs would be that much better. So that might not happen all the time, obviously, but keep your eyes open in a draft. Maybe you could pull it together. Careless Celebrants. Okay, good limited card here at Uncommon. It's a 2/1 for 2. Nice curve filler, but it has a very relevant death trigger as well. Doing 2 damage to an opponent's creature or planeswalker most of the time will be very welcome. Like we've been talking, this could fit into the Rakdos game plan, or again, if you found Gallia of the Endless Dance, this is a satyr, so pay attention for that interaction too. But ultimately, this is just a solid limited card no matter what color combination you're in, or if you're in mono red. In standard, maybe I would try this out in one of the sacrifice decks just to see how it plays. Maybe it could get there. Fateful End. I don't have a lot to say about this one. Very good limited card though. I mean, it deals 3 damage for 3, scry 1 on top of it, instant speed. It's very splashable too. Yeah, you're always going to be happy to play cards like this in Drafter Sealed. Fantastic limited common here, Oread of Mountain's Blaze. I like these type of cards a lot. They're very simple, but they do a lot of work. 2 casting costs 1/3, that can slow down the game a little bit. Red and 2, you get to rummage. Rummaging is always good, especially in this set. Being able to populate your graveyard for escape could definitely come in handy. And like I've been talking, especially in Rakdos colors, there are some payoffs other than escape for having cards in your graveyard, so this is perfect in that strategy. On top of all that, it happens to be an enchantment as well. Yeah, this is a very solid common pickup for Draft or Sealed. This one is a Japanese language preview, Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Okay, so let's talk limited with this one first. There's a lot happening here. It's an enchantment creature, so it's got that going for it. It's a 2/4 for 3, so those are really good stats on their own. And you can play an additional land on each of your turns, so as long as you can hit the land drops, you could ramp out a little bit. In addition to that, lands you control have all basic land types in addition to their other types. So you're able to fix colors a little bit. This is a rare. You're going to be lucky to have 1, so I'm not going to say try to build like 5-color good stuff around this necessarily in Draft or Sealed. But if you do want to splash a color or 2, this might help out your consistency in those builds. For standard purposes, this might see play if there's like a 5-color good stuff deck that comes about. This could be a part of that. And finally, this has the Prismatic Omen effect, so this will be welcome in Commander too. This one's a French language preview, but it was previously leaked, so it might look a little familiar. It's Hydra's Growth. So let's talk about standard first. I do think this is a little too risky for standard because it is an aura, and it does take a few turns for it to really get going. Limited, though, I think this will be good. Yes, it's an aura, and there's still a risk involved here. But within the Theros environment, especially in Selesnya colors, I think from what we're seeing, they are trying to mitigate the risk a little bit. Additionally, we will see some cards in a moment that demonstrate that Simic strategy uses +1/+1 counters. Putting this on a creature that already had some counters enhances the value. And if you get this on a creature on the battlefield, your opponent has to have an answer or they could be in trouble within a couple turns. Some commander decks might like this too, as long as you have the ability to protect the aura and the creature. This could be decent in a stompy build. Mantle of the Wolf. This one is a rare, but maybe one of the better auras we've seen so far for Drafter Sealed, and here's what I like about it. Aside from all the other things the auras do for you, of course, they could interact with other cards that care about enchantments. We've been talking about that all week. But this one, even though, yes, there's still a risk involved, if you can get it onto the creature, and then something happens to the creature, it gets destroyed with a removal or something, you're still going to get value in the form of 2 wolf tokens that are 2/2. So basically what this card's trying to do for 4 mana is give you a total of 8/8 power toughness on the battlefield. Granted, it will be in installments. Still though, for the cost, the economy feels really good here. Renata, Called to the Hunt. This is another sweet demigod. I just love these. An uncommon, gonna be great for you in limited. First off, 2 green and 2, so it does contribute 2 to green devotion, which also means, again, if this is the only green card you have on the battlefield, at least it's a 2/3, although you're paying 4 this time. Beyond that, it's an enchantment, which could matter, and the ability is quite good. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter, so it's kind of like Grum Gully. And if you had a chance to play with that in limited for Throne of Eldraine, you know that was a pretty good card. So awesome build around card in draft, and just an awesome value card in general for draft or sealed. Simic may especially care about this because it does appear that their theme this time is +1/+1 counters. Eutropia, the twice favored. Okay, this is a real sweet Simic signpost card here for draft or sealed. So it's a 2/2 for 3, nothing crazy yet, legendary creature, human wizard, but check this out. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains flying until end of turn. So like I mentioned earlier, it does appear that Simic does care about +1/+1 counters this time. And this is great offensively to get you past a board stall, perhaps. Hopefully, you are going to have a lot of opportunities to run enchantments in your deck. This is the Theros environment. There's a fair amount of enchantment creatures, there's auras, regular enchantments kicking around. So if you can activate this even a few times over the course of the game, it could make a big difference. Offensively, of course, you play that enchantment. What if you put an aura on a creature, made that creature jump up in the air, get damage across? That could be a devastating turn right there. But you could even use this defensively. We've seen the Omens, which are enchantments that have flash. So if your opponent is looking at your board state and you have open mana, and this sitting there and some other creatures, they do have to think twice before they attack in. They really have to double check that combat math, because there's a chance you could throw an Omen down, get some other ability to trigger, and then of course also give something the +1/+1 and have it jump into the air. This could lead to a lot of big plays. Next we have Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. This one's a mythic. Black and red, legendary creature, Elder Giant, another giant again. 6/6. When this enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. When this enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card, then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. The escape cost is 2 black, 2 red, and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. Okay, so this is cheap to get started because remember, you play this for 2, it goes to the battlefield, so the ability will trigger, but then you do have to sacrifice it. Later on, though, you can bring it back with escape. There is a ton of efficiency behind this card, and yes, it will see standard play. Maybe you could put this into a discard deck. You could perhaps use this, Rankle, Davriel, Urox Venlurker, Carnival and Carnage. That feels like it could be the start of a deck. That might be a little bit risky, though, in the standard environment if Escape does really well. And if that's the case, I'm sure there's other places you can think to use this card, perhaps just Rakdos aggro. I think this has potential even outside of standard, maybe like an Ajund Pioneer build, too. Commander, every time it triggers, it does impact all of your opponents, so maybe it is worth trying out. If not, your commander is part of the 99, kind of see how it plays. I do feel like it might put a target on your back, though. And finally, limited. Obviously, it's a mythic. You won't see it a lot, but yes, it is a limited bomb. If you get a chance to play with it, go for it. Euro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Okay, this is a super sweet mythic. Check out the design here. Blue, green, and 1. Legendary creature, Elder Giant. So there's another giant like we talked about earlier. 6/6. When this enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever this enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. It has an escape cost of 2 blue, 2 green, and exile 5 cards from your graveyard. Let's talk about Commander first and just cut to the chase with this card. Earlier, we mentioned that maybe you would want to build a giant deck in Commander now that we are getting a lot of interesting giants. Or you could put this into any deck playing Simic colors and just enjoy the value. Whether it's your Commander or if it's not your Commander, you go ahead and play this for 3. It goes to the battlefield and you're in a situation where you get to basically growth spiral and gain 3 life, and then it goes to the graveyard. Then later on, you get to escape this out of the graveyard when you have the resources to do so, and you got yourself a 6/6 with added value. Again, that trigger is going to happen when it enters the battlefield, and then whenever it attacks, you're going to get that trigger. But the big question, could it see standard play? I think it actually could. I mean, it's a little different from Growth Spiral. It's not an instant, and it does cost 1 more, but look at all the upside you're getting here. That feels like it could be good enough to show up in maybe a few different decks in standard, as a matter of fact. Limited, this card's going to be a bomb, as you can imagine. It's a mythic, it won't show up that much, but when you can play with it, you're going to want to. Soul Guide Lantern. Let's talk about standard first with this one. I'm glad they're making answers to deal with potential problems that could come up in the environment. Escape is one of those problems. If there's a really powerful escape deck, you're going to want to have answers. Now, when you look at this card and compare it to, say, Grafdigger's Cage, you would say, you know what, I'm probably just going to go with Grafdigger's Cage, unless I care about interacting with my graveyard. And if I do, then this is going to be my sideboard option of choice to hose other people's graveyard mechanics. And I think there's going to be plenty of them out there in standard. Escape is coming. We already have seen reanimation decks. We've already seen Cauldron Familiar do its thing. So I do think this is going to be a card that does see standard play, at least in that certain circumstance where you care about going to your graveyard. Commander, I would say the same thing. There might be better hose options out there, but this one impacts all opponents and not you, so there are decks that are going to be interested in this. Limited, it's going to be a great card to bring in out of your sideboard if you do run into problematic escape cards or some other strategy that's going to the graveyard. However, depending on how the format goes, it might not be wrong to main deck this. It just depends on how prevalent those graveyard strategies are. In worst case scenario, you do main deck this and you don't need it. Well, you paid 1 to cast it, you can pay another 1, tap, sacrifice it, and at least you can go and draw a card and get it replaced. Alright, that concludes our cards for today. We're going to come back tomorrow and look at all the cards that are previewed over the next 24 hours or so. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.